Будеш гарний і в громаді досконалій, беру притулок, доки просвітлюся. Силою чеснот від щедрості та інших добрих дій, які творю, хай просвітління звершиться на благо всіх істот.
So this morning I gave an introduction to the Lama, and so we have said in the beginning, when we first take refuge, we seek the three jewels as our sources of refuge, and here we learn that from the Buddha arises the Dharma, and the Dharma is the various levels of the path, the Pratimoksha, Bodhisattva, and the Vajrayana paths, and within that we have mentioned now specifically the Vajrayana path, and in that context we engage in the practice of the three roots as our inner sources of refuge. And so of that I've introduced you to the nature of the Lama. And so we as I mentioned before, that all of these qualities are complete within the Guru who embodies the Buddha. So in the beginning, on the basis, he is the embodiment of the three jewels. Then when we engage in practice, we practice the three roots. And then as a result, we attain the three kayas. So these are the 9 jewels that our Guru embodies. So therefore, we regard him like a wish-fulfilling jewel. And so then, relying on the Guru, what is it that we need to understand? And when we follow a Guru, we learn the practice of the Yidam deity. And so first we say we should see the Guru as indivisible from the Buddha. And they are indivisible because also when the Buddha taught the Dharma, it was through the Dharma that we can understand the way to practice. And so likewise now in the context of the three roots teachings, in reliance on the teachings of the Lama, the Guru, we learn how to engage in the Yidam deity practice. So we learn this is something that can be accomplished. And so this term Yidam itself, Yi actually means the mind, and Dam means a commitment made to the mind. And that is sort of like saying I want to have a companion, a friend that will never separate from me in all future lifetimes. and that is the Yidam deity, and that is unlike a worldly human companion, because one day we will separate from all of our human companions. They are unreliable, they are impermanent, because they are compounds coming together and going apart. Our real companion is the Yidam deity. So therefore we take a commitment to the mind, to the Yidam deity. And so where is that deity? What actually is that deity? This morning we mentioned deity has the nature of the Sambhogakaya. When I introduced you to the Lama's three kayas, the Sambhogakaya nature of the Lama is the deity. And then we have mentioned that there are countless pure lands and there are countless Yidam deities. So there's many deities. But in general, there's two types of gods or deities. There is the wisdom deities, and then there is the worldly gods. And so the wisdom gods or wisdom deities are those who themselves have found liberation from suffering and are therefore able to show the path of practice on how to become liberated.
사기를 오면 처음에 끌리는 경우요. 다만 끌리 제가 좋아서 한번 되고요. 끌리지 그런 조금 원거리에 이 조금 뒤다는 기가만 그런 게가 좀 무섭긴 통로요. 이게 가는 무슨 때문에 자초도 그렇고 지와도 차만 통로요. 이게 문제지 지와도 아마 기르시니 송이 뭐다 하고 그거요. 그 송이 이 롱거제 나쁜 전사 당시에 요열이에서 그리고까지 다 마찬가지라 그러니 요열 같은 것이 나마다 뭐하고 소속되네 배워야 무슨 배워야 되고 그러니까 뭐야 요리 송수 대야를 제자는가 그 롱거지 맞아 답을 이럴 감이나 다 기봐서 이들이 시바 다는 주가 상태를 다인이 형제 결혼을 내배들이 랑간 나와 랑롱 받는데서 이들이 나와지 고단지 감정을 봐요. 그래서 복하고 요리 양당 양도서 못하는데 양내배 빼서 담아서 내려고 동도 남겨버리나 이제는 이제 가면 민지가 생다 말한 그 생긴 예측 빨리 먼저 내다 파차기들이 소소 소소 이제도 나와서서 지금 나와서 가서서 이마도 세부 이제 빨리 랑은 나와는 게 통로요. 그러나 왕관을 저같이 시작한 자 성질은 못 보고 조금 남가다 너무 약속다고서 조금 남가다 시작한 거는 이들은 누가 이게 따로 셔도 돈이 문제냐 저런 근데 약속 뭐 하면 샤이는 거예요. 이는 하고 나는 세는 하면 되거든요. 이 필요게 다시 이쪽으로 도모제에 내용을 보여야 돼요. 리셋도 뭔가 세도 뭔가 보죠. 조금 갖다가 차지요. 라는 말이 차요. 사촉적으로 나오는 게 아버지 감독이 차요. 마다 도와줘. 난지 니지는 도와줘. 차요. 로또 똑같이 다 버티는 니지는 감사함이 그 당시 감사함이 받아왔지. 가지고 무슨 요 그거지. 그래서 생계를 가다서 니지는 말이에요. 내가 나는 나와라 그러는 거야. 뭐가 진지가 내서 그 고쳐는데 따라하는 이제 내가 작다기 있는데 따라하거나 생각만 내를 보고 따라하기는 아무것도 안 하는 거예요. 그러니까 나와라 롱도 좋아지고 이제 내가 떠나면다 남기는 라다메이 이상하게 무슨 도가들이 어디에 이 파트너들이 라니 좋아하는 거예요. 아버지 강한테 내 돈을 봐. 내려는 롱도 좋아지고 라는 나와라 라는 롱도가 이제야 대고통들이 내버려버렸죠.
And so then for the Sambhogakaya, when we attain the state of enlightenment, it is said that we attain the state of, we manifest two kayas, so two forms. In a prayer, it is said, may I attain the two kayas. And so there are two kayas that we can, that manifest. These are the Sambhogakayas and the Nirmana kayas. They actually manifest in this world. So the Nirmana kayas are those that we as ordinary beings can directly see. And we have mentioned there's various forms. There is the incarnated, the manifold, and the created, various forms of Nirmana kayas that we can see. And especially through the incarnated Nirmana kaya, the spiritual teacher will learn about all the Nirmana kaya's qualities through listening to his teachings and understanding the meaning. And then the Sambhogakaya is said to be the sphere of those with pure karmas. So only those with pure karmas can directly see the Sambhogakayas. The Nirmanakayas appear in both pure and impure ways, as to both pure and impure beings. And especially in the samsaric sentient beings in the 6 realms can make an actual connection to the Nirmanakayas. They can see them, like a lama, for example, they can hear their teachings and so on. And so why is it that the Sambhogakaya is the sphere of those endowed with pure karma? It is pure here means that those individuals, those beings are free of dualistic grasping or perception. So that is when whatever appears to them is recognized. Things appear. It is not that things, there's nothing, but whatever appears as their own projection, their own reflection. So not separate from them. And although things appear the way they appear to us, and they enjoy those things, they engage in those things like conversation and so on, at the same time there is no dualistic perception with regard to those things, those appearances. They enjoy and partake of these appearances while still in knowing that these are not separate entities from them, that they're actually enjoying their own projections. So in the beginning, that is rather difficult to understand, but it becomes easier the more you really reflect upon it. So when we talk about a non-dualistic perception, it doesn't mean that nothing is there, that there's no perception. Things appear, but in a different way. So a yogin who sees things as they really are, for example, sees all these people here, but he doesn't think that those beings are separate individuals or entities. These beings, he doesn't see them as separate from him. He knows that actually we all are one on a single basis and only temporarily appear in like male and female bodies, and we experience different forms of happiness and suffering due to our individual karmas and habitual tendencies. We have different thoughts in our mind, but the actual outer basis, we actually are connected to one another and we are not separate existing entities. So although he sees others, for instance, he doesn't see them as others, but sees them as their own as his own projections. For example, during the empowerment, and we are introduced to this by using the symbol of the crystal. So the crystal the crystal ball represents the Dharmakaya, which is like space, the empty essence of mind. And then the sunlight that shines on the crystal, that represents the great compassion of the Buddhas. And so when the sun shines on the crystal, then rainbow lights emerge. And these are like the Sambhogakayas appearing. So this happens when emptiness is touched by compassion, the rays of compassion, then naturally rainbow lights appear, the Sambhogakayas appear. And whatever appears is the projection of the crystal and not separate from the crystal, not a separate entity. So, for example, a person who has realized that still has conversations, has partners, partakes of the five sense pleasures, enjoys things, but it is like an enjoyment of one's own projections. So, therefore, the Sambhogakaya, literally translated, is called the enjoyment body. One partakes of or enjoys one's own projections. And one's own projections in the Pure Lands, the Pure Lands are the projection of a mind of bodhicitta, whereas the six realms of samsara are the projection of dualistic grasping and self-grasping. So the Sambhogakaya is the sphere of those with pure karmas, of those who have no dualistic perception. For example, those who dwell in the Pure Lands of Devachen and so on. And these Pure Lands actually exist, and beings actually enjoy the bliss of these Pure Lands, but without any dualistic grasping, without seeing things in an ordinary way, but enjoying things while knowing these things to be one's own projections, without grasping at them to have any substantial, concrete, separate reality. So, first of all, to realize this, we must understand this view, and we must understand that things actually are not separate from one another. There's nothing is dual, nothing is separate. And so, when you understand that, and slowly your perception will transform, and you will see things. Things will still appear to you, but there will be no grasping to their separate existence. Then you partake of your own projections, and partaking or enjoying your own projections also implies that there is no effort. You effortlessly enjoy whatever comes your way, realizing it to be your own projections. Such a being without dualistic grasping enjoys all the qualities of the God and human realms, the perfect glories and pleasures and bliss of samsara and nirvana, naturally and effortlessly. That is the quality of the enjoyment body, or the Sambhogakaya. The enjoyment body, or Sambhogakaya, enjoys its own projections without grasping at them as existing separately from himself.
Tereni sana di mirano makamina. Tereni sancho sana kondi sonne giocare più in una camina. 다른 세상도 되나 다들 박차를 리제에 먹고 지금 박차를 리다 세서 나는 그 세자는 나는 되는 저도 잘 박차도 봐요 세는 아무 사도 세지 봐야 이 박차대로 박차가 사하니랑 탁하요 그 박차도 이제 쫙되는 거나 나도 박차도 이제 나다 하고 자살이야 대리는 라파도 당고리 삼게 지지주가 전 바로 이반한테 롱거로 삼게 타나들 바로 소바도 바로 삼게 봐 체질 그쪽으로 삼게 봐 담아 내 상하에서 그래서 다다다 다상하지 받을 소거든 다 기회는 다 나다라는 소리로 이제 상속세를 주발에 이제는 뭐나도 다도 누구 박차도 놓은 거를 이제는 다다 나의 재성을 가사만 되나 내가 사기들이 이제 좀 이제 그러면 그냥 왕국가 반찬들이 이제 좀 재성을 살아비를 하는 것이 누구를 하는 도고차 남들이 도고 남들 도고 차 그리 하나는 남들 라는 사람 있을 차 뒤를 봐도 그래 이제 좀 이제서 예를 들면 이제 그런 요에 제는 아마 얘들들이 나치 봉지 주지 제지 여러분 개인 거를 예를 들면 이제 좀 유대한 게 아마 이제 좀 말이지.
And so there are three levels of the path, the Pratimoksha, Bodhisattva, and the Vajrayana vehicles, that we all progress along gradually. So first, as beginning practitioners, we enter the Pratimoksha path of individual liberation. And the reason why we are a beginning practitioner is because in previous lives, we have had little familiarization with the Dharma, understanding of karma, and so on. Therefore, self-grasping is still quite strong, and the path, therefore, is still longer. So the difference really lies in how much one has familiarized oneself with the Dharma, with bodhicitta in previous lives. So then if one has habituated to bodhicitta somewhat in previous lives, then in this life one already is somewhat closer. And therefore the path seems to be quicker. So when we follow first the Pratimoksha path, it is that one needs to accumulate merit throughout 3 aeons, and then finally one attains perfect and complete enlightenment. And then once one has entered the Bodhisattva path, then it is already somewhat quicker, because one has already habituated to it in previous lives. And then it only takes a few lives to attain enlightenment. So gradually over the course of several lifetimes, one habituates, increases the 4 immeasurables, and self-grasping disappears. One gradually attains the bhumis of the bodhisattvas and so on. And then when we enter the Vajrayana path, we are on the very swift path. It provides methods to attain enlightenment within a single lifetime, a single body. And so we say that the Vajrayana is meant for those with higher mental capacity or intelligence. And so what really determines this level of intelligence is actually one's familiarization to the practice that was already done or not done in previous lives. So those who have habituated to bodhicitta in previous lives now possess greater intelligence or insight. So actually I came up with an example to exemplify the 3 levels of the path, and this is my own example that I came up with. So I'm not sure if it is suitable or not, but in any case, to represent the pratimoksha path, or actually any religion, a beginning religion, is like traveling on a car, on a road. So you are on the road in a car and you know where you're going. And so that is the pratimoksha path, where you're first abandoning the afflictive emotions. And then you enter the bodhisattva path, and here you are transforming the afflictive emotions with love and compassion. You render them powerless, you transform them. And that is like traveling on a train. You're a bit quicker on the train because you're cutting through the mountains, through the tunnels, and so on, in a more direct way. So that is like you're overcoming the afflictions faster in a more direct way than previously. And then once you have entered the Vajrayana path, it is like traveling on an airplane. That is the fastest path to get anywhere. And so the reason why it is now called the swift path, unlike the other two paths, actually, so why is that? It has, in terms of the mind, bodhicitta is also developed in the bodhisattva path, but still it is that only on the basis of bodhicitta, it still takes several lifetimes to attain enlightenment. So what is it then that makes the Vajrayana the swift path, if bodhicitta is the same? It is because even though we have cultivated bodhicitta in our mind, we still have those habitual patterns, these imprints of grasping at phenomena, at appearances as concrete, really existing things separate from us. So we strongly grasp at the outer forms and the inner body, the outer sounds and the inner speech to have some self-sufficient existence. So it is because of these imprints of body and speech that although bodhicitta gradually arises, that we still wander in samsara, we still take birth. And so the Vajrayana is the swift path, as it provides a method to destroy these habitual imprints of ordinary grasping at the body and the speech. And so the ordinary perception of the body is cleared away by the generation stage, the visualization of the deity. And the habitual imprints of the speech are purified through the mantra recitation. And when these all are purified on the basis of bodhicitta, then ideally one attains enlightenment in the first bardo, in the Dharmakaya, or if not, then in the second bardo, in the Sambhogakaya, or at least in the third bardo, in the Nirmanakaya. So the Vajrayana provides instructions to attain enlightenment in a single lifetime, in a single body, and mainly through the practices of the generation stage and the mantra recitation. The basis of bodhicitta is still the same. And so then, according to the new tantric system, the Sarma, we progress along 4 classes of tantra: the Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Anuttara Yoga tantras. And that is a progression depending on one's level of realization. So that is first in the Kriya Tantra, the action Tantra, we first recognize the deity, we acquaint ourselves. Then secondly, in the performance, the second yoga, we become friends with the deity. Then in the third level, the yoga tantra, we become like best friends with the deity. And then in the fourth, the anuttara, the highest level, we merge non-dually with the deity. And so also in relation to those 4 classes of tantra, there are 4 levels of 4 sorts of generation stage. And these 4 sorts of generation stage correspond to the 4 ways in which we can take birth. That is through either the womb or an egg, through heat and moisture, or miraculously. So these are all connected, the 4 types of generation stage, and the 4 types in which we can take birth, and the 4 classes of tantra.
이제 좋아. 그래서 저기다가 대소마에 대해서까지 또 다른 때문에 이제 터치 받을 경우 도다 샤지 도다 샤지 뭐시고 도다 샤지 샤고 작하는 거보다 야와서 계획을 찍고 샤지 좀 샤성들도 그러고 대학 고린들이 대를 받아들이 도다 샤지 샤지 때문에 좀 받쳐야 그다음에 저거랑 강력하게 강하고 이제 저기 가면 아주 하나하나 그렇게 그들이 라이오에 그 초합하고 이제라 마음으로 그 마다트라게 하는 게 초합이 되고요. 사실은 저렇게 양마 호비와게 그다가 무섭지도 이렇게 차게 나서 때문에 맞아 그렇지 마파체는 아주 맞게 이렇게 나도 지원해서 다른 소개지에서 이렇게 지금 자체적으로 벌을 보시는 가지고 저는 어느 단계 그렇게 되고 이제는 왕나무 같이 쉬는 필요로 왕이 나서 좀 차게 넣어서 좀 나서 좀 왕 느껴지는 사실 지상적으로 이렇게 이제도 할 수가 있는 방법 눈다고 사들 신의 이식 제를 통해 이제 그렇게 보는 저서 지대는 대양처럼 그리고 신바지라는 바스는 신바가 저기 통제를 하고 왕 진행된 거에 일단은 대학교 문항 들을 하고 내가 대모습하고 저기 통제 생각 남대로 자기 남친 시작해 생 동남은 이제 시좀 못돼 사기를 독지방은 내가 대라서 보통 우리 사기 탐지 일을 합니다. 치우고 와요. 그런데 또 이렇게 좀 로단하나 비마트 이렇게 좀 하고 그래. 또 무슨 거래. 약간 지발을 새끼 감 왕고 남의 내가 너무 탐지 치우고 세월을 좀 맞추고 받아라. 수지 통계이라는 것이 앞서는 리제라 밀바나 리제라 잡주나 다른 정도의 상대 공방 맞춰도 봐도 상대 공방도 봐도 좌들 기준으로 차려야지 이게 맞춰도 봐도 사람들 자서 밀바를 때가 신받지 않는데 봤을 때 하고 다른 잡라는 이제 그런 소리를 보고 그리고 제대로 파마는 이로 가서 봐. 내가 이런 자기로 와서 다마다 마고 그러다 봐요. 그래도 어떻게 랑스한테 마찬가지 상처받을 다는 자체 저거 저거 하나에 이 대한 저 통을 하다 상처에 덮고 관계가 딱 벌써 그거에 사실상 상처에서 문제 예시서라는 거를 보죠. 아시바가 망고를 강의를 그려요. 이게 상속성들하고 사실상 상속성에서 말해 서로 상속성은 소소한테 단계 좀 맞춰를 해서 돈을 사실상 속으로 다음 자체성을 상속성이 보여요. 예를 들면 사람과 다른 또 자기는 매번 나오는 상속성이
So we talk about the different systems of tantra, mainly the new tantras and the old tantras. There's all sorts of explanations regard to that, but basically for the old tantras now there's basically two types. There is the Gama and the Dharma. The Gama are the actual direct oral instructions, and the Dharma are the concealed treasures. So this particular sadhana, this practice belongs to the Dharma tradition. And so in the Gama, for instance, the Gama teaches them the 4 classes of Tantra and so on, and mainly contains the more elaborate forms of practice. Actually, when Guru Rinpoche came to Tibet, he said that no, he gave a practice, a ritual, a single one that is sufficient in itself to engage in practice. All the 4 classes of Tantra are included within that. And so basically the dharmas are in a way an abridged version of the Gama. Everything is included within it. They are less elaborate. So within the dharma, all the 4 levels of practice are included. So in the Nyingma system, for instance, we talk about the 4 branches of approach and accomplishment. So this particular sadhana here belongs to this Dharma tradition of deity practice. And so in order to practice the deity, we first must also understand the nature of the deity. There's actually countless deities, and yet they all are one within the wisdom mind. It is said that if you practice a single deity with this understanding, you are accomplishing all the deities. So all the deities basically are the same. And sometimes we have a special connection to a certain deity from previous lives, a karmically destined deity. And if we do not have such a deity, then you can actually just practice whichever deity you personally like more, whatever you feel drawn to. So often we have a special connection to a deity because we have already practiced that deity in previous lives. And so therefore now in this life, when we, for example, see an image of the deity or we hear the deity's mantra, a very strong feeling arises, a special feeling. And so then that is a sign that this is a karmically destined deity. But in general, there is no difference between the deities. The difference comes in only in terms of our personal habituation to the deity in previous lives. And if you do not have such a special feeling towards a deity, you can just pick any deity, and one deity and one mantra is sufficient. For example, in the Tibetan tradition, the Tibetans consider Tara, Chinvazik, Guru Rinpoche as very precious to practice. But in brief, it is sufficient if you just practice a single deity. Still, nevertheless, it is very beneficial to receive many empowerments because, as we have mentioned, the empowerment is like the sojong of the tantric system. So in the sutra system, we have the sojong of purifying and restoring, and the sojong of the tantras is the empowerment. So then during the empowerment, we receive the samaya, and if we observe this samaya, if we engage in practice, then the deity will always protect us. And so the deity possesses 3 major qualities, and that is the deity has an omniscient mind, and then the deity has great love and compassion, the deity has the power to protect us, and actually fourth, also the deity has performs enlightened activities. So in brief, there are those 3: omniscient mind, love, and ability to protect. So with omniscient mind, the deity knows the mind and the dispositions of all sentient beings. For example, in the prayer of Deva Chen, it says that the moment you supplicate, then the deity will already be with you. The omniscient mind of the deity is always there, always knowing the mind of all sentient beings. And that is because the Buddha nature of all beings and the mind of the Buddhas are always connected. So that is the omniscient mind of the deity. For example, in the Tara supplication, we also say Tara appears like a lightning bolt in an instant, the moment you think of her. And that is because our minds actually are already connected to the deity. And the deity knows the karmas, the sufferings, the thoughts, the dispositions of all sentient beings. So then the second quality, that of great loving compassion, is the deity loves all beings just like a mother loves her only child, without any bias whatsoever. And then the quality of protection is that if you seek refuge in the deity will protect you from now onwards until attaining enlightenment. And when you attain enlightenment, you merge non-dually with the deity. And until then, the deity will be your trustworthy companion, always protecting you. And that is unlike a worldly human companion. For example, like our parents and our friends or partners and so on. We have a karmic connection that is due to previous karmas and temporary conditions, but all of these relations are actually impermanent and will not last. The relation we have to the deity, if we keep our samayas pure, will never be lost until we attain enlightenment. So that is why also during the empowerment we always say it is important to observe the root samaya, which is the mind of bodhicitta. So actually that is the nature of the deity. Once in the past, Yeshe Tsogyal asked Guru Rinpoche, there's all these deities, where do they all come from? And Guru Rinpoche replied, all the deities arise from bodhicitta. They are the embodiment of bodhicitta. And therefore, whoever gives rise to bodhicitta becomes the deity. So the deity is a mind of bodhicitta. So first, we therefore learn in the very beginning when we take refuge, it is necessary to cultivate bodhicitta. Also later when we practice the deity, we must practice the deity on the basis of bodhicitta. So no matter what we practice, the one indispensable foundation of our practice is bodhicitta.
사한 나가 그탑지 저는 남았음 것은 이거 저를 하장지 봐 많이 봐 하장지 봐 많이 봐 뭐 그탑지 제 말이지 동아를 동치기 잘 봤으면 돼요. 아무리 시고 시고는 이제 저들이 아산에 담들 때 맞지 세상에 담들 문제지 사제 담들 때 맞죠 사제 담들서 하는 거 세계는 문제는 하나 다지시 이 양상들이서 사들은 조성 이런 일이 사지 이런 거 보자마더니 플라이 라고한테가 가는 거 와서 이렇게 해서 다 하고 동화 주세요 샤병들은 들이 샤는 되지 나빠살아 제가 하랑 샤나 들이 좋아하고 들이 깨는 영들 이 차로 돼서 아마 나빠살아 남다 뒤가 들이 그진 차로 때문에 이 샤와를 때문에 지체 적성이요 적성도 이제 사용 되는지 또 던져들이 달아서 맞게 되더라도 뭐 이렇게 되냐 바빠지가 원래로 지내는 데 나는 뭔가를 시간을 들었다 되는 게 바빠 다시 조금 재미있게 되라서 우리 차로 사사를 되는 거예요. 대여도 써놓고 세상에 용기지 야야야야 이때 마다 그렇게 봤는지 다 오고 사실 이런 나도 있어 거예요. 이런 나도 다 돼요. 파나도 다 하고 이 보가 장모도 다 하고 거의 살아서 뭐 천년 모아서 오는 거예요. 남다르고 그때 좋아하고 가고 형들한테 딱 대로 지금 다 있는지 나자티 봐서 나빠서 남다르고 나자티 봐서 아니 자기가 미사고는 자기를 해서 다른 거 뭐라니 말이 나한테 인상으로 해서 참 그 말을 이렇게 다 예루살렘 마사람들이 당고가 클라스는 클라스는 저거는 이거만 상속적인 시기들 필요성을 놓고 있어요. 그래서 뒤가 설득과 진짜 잘해요. 상속적인 저거만 내가 가서 클라스는 저거는 이나 사람은 제발도 없어요. 그래서 이거는 내로 또 그랬더니 맞아요. 제가 일단 이발을 말씀을 찾고요. 맞을 때 와서 그때서 기회를 또 공사 선택에 나빠서 사실 동화선 차고 나다 그지 차고 그때 인생에 양양을 이렇게 좋아하고 그런 거를 맞을 때 와서 때 와서 사실 말에 무슨 너를 상는 게 가지고 오나라에 나 세대라 세대에서 있어요. 이나 잡지 막 무슨 거예요. 까들이들이 클라들이 사족들이 나타나요.
So actually also the deity that we are practicing has a samaya, not just us. And that samaya began when before enlightenment, when the deity first cultivated the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So the deities have attained enlightenment on the basis of this mind of bodhicitta. And now having realized the nature of mind, all dualistic grasping has fallen apart. So now they see sentient beings who have not seen that, sentient beings who grasp at a self, at a duality, and due to that give rise to many negative thoughts of attachment, resentment, and so on, hatred. And as a result of that, there's a great variety of beings appearing in the six realms of samsara, all experiencing incredible suffering. We can just look around at the suffering we can see in this world. So seeing this suffering, they cultivated compassion. And through great compassion, their self-grasping has disappeared and they have attained enlightenment. So now, following their previous pledges, whoever supplicates them, they must come to help them. If they would not come, then they would actually break their own samaya, which they would not do. So that is a deity's samaya. And then also we as the practitioners have a samaya when we receive the empowerment, and we have learned what is the root samaya. So we are actually connected to the deity in two different ways. Number one, we are always connected to the deity on the basis of Buddha nature. On that level, there's not the slightest difference between our mind and the deity's mind. In the Samantabhadra prayer that many of you have, it says there is a single basis but two paths and two results. And that is just like water. Water is always the same. But if you pour it down the toilet, it becomes dirty. That's like mixing it with self-grasping. And then nobody can drink it anymore. It's dirty. And then if you keep it clean, then you can drink it and you can make food out of it and so on. But both the toilet water and the drinking water is the same as in being water, only they have encountered a different condition. So one is the condition of altruism and one is the condition of self-grasping. In the 37 practices, it therefore says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So in the beginning, we must therefore cultivate a wish to benefit sentient beings. That is our samaya as the practitioner, to cultivate love. And that's the second connection then we can establish to the deity. So the first connection we always have, and that is we have a single basis, we are always connected. But then the actual connection to the deity is established if we cultivate the four immeasurables love. And therefore, even in the beginning already, when we take refuge, we must cultivate bodhicitta. So this is how we cultivate, establish a connection to the deity. And then we practice the deity on the basis of bodhicitta. If we would practice the deity unfounded on bodhicitta, without bodhicitta, then it becomes much like practicing a worldly god. A worldly god might appear in the same form as a deity, like in a rainbow-like form, but still the worldly god is not beyond suffering. It is just like us, or like a bardo being. It is not beyond fear. So this term worldly in the Tibetan actually also implies some kind of fear, something that does not transcend fear. So because they are still self-grasping, they will always be fear. And therefore they're worldly beings. And that is unlike a wisdom being that has cultivated bodhicitta. And so therefore it is important to visualize the deity on the basis of bodhicitta. So as you learned during the empowerment, we cultivate an altruistic mind, and that is a wish to benefit others. And then instantly, the moment that wish arises, we visualize that this mind transforms into the syllable Shri or the syllable Hong. And that is the beginning point of the generation stage. And so the sadhana, the sadhana here consists of a threefold visualization or generation stage. And that is like a medium length visualization. It is not exceedingly concise, but also not very extensive. So this Guru Rinpoche sadhana belongs to the Dharma tradition. It is a visualization done in 3 steps. And that is related to the womb birth. And so it is said that first we visualize the syllable Shri, and then we think that from the 3 light radiates, that is our devotion to the Buddhas, and through that devotion we absorb the blessings of the Buddhas, and then also this Shri radiates compassion to sentient beings, and that also purifies your own self-grasping, and then in an instant you transform into the deity. And so this is how we visualize the generation stage. As we have mentioned in the empowerment yesterday, you received a picture. First, just look at the face of the deity and have that face appear in your mind again and again. So first there will be a vague image of the deity. That is the first step of generation stage. It is a clear visualization. So actually you should learn about the visualization outside of your practice. That is when you're not in your session, you should study the visualization, the generation stage, so then you can apply it when you actually are in your sitting practice. So that's the first step. The second step is to recollect the purity, and that is the outer form of the deity all represents some a quality of the deity's mind. For example, the peaceful deities have 13 qualities of Sambhoga Kaya that are represented by various outer appearances. Or the wrathful deities appear in various wrathful adornments like ashes and smear and so on. Or some deities are wearing a crown ornament of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, and that represents the transformation of the 5 afflictions into the 5 wisdoms. And then, depending on various other forms of appearance, there is the meaning of the 6 paramitas or the 4 immeasurables being represented. So for this reason, the deity has different numbers of faces and hands and legs and so on. So each of these elements represent a certain quality, a pure quality in a deity's mind, and remembering those pure qualities purify your own impure perceptions. So some people actually think that the visualization is just another thought construct, but actually it is a purifying process actually, because through visualizing the deity we are purifying our worldly or ordinary habitual imprint in our mind. Every time we engage in any worldly samsaric activity, we are actually reinforcing those habitual patterns in our mind. So when we practice the deity, we break these habitual patterns. So study the visualization of the deity in your break sessions, and then when you come to the session, remember their pure meaning of the various elements of the visualization. That's the second step. And the third step is to develop a divine pride or a firm confidence of really being the deity. So sometimes people also don't really understand that, and for them it becomes sort of a pretense. They say, actually, I'm not the deity, but I just pretend I'm the deity. So many beginning practitioners have some doubts about that. So this is not the right way to approach it. Actually, it is secondary whether or not the generation stage is pure. What's more important is to understand how we really are the deity. So we do not just think I'm the deity that looks like that, but I am the deity for one because on the basis of mind, of Buddha nature, I'm already connected to the deity. And secondly, I've given rise to bodhicitta. I wish to benefit others. Therefore, I really am the deity. And that mind actually is not any different to the mind of the deity. So whenever bodhicitta is present within your mind, that state of mind is not any different to the deity's mind. And so this is how you can develop confidence of actually being the deity. It is by actually understanding the nature of the deity. To really recognize your true nature, the true nature of the deity within you. So these are the 3 steps of the generation stage: the visualization with clarity, recollecting purity, and the firm pride. So first you visualize, you focus more on the face of the deity. As for visualization, then you recollect the purity, the various pure qualities represented by the outer elements of the deity's form, which you should also study when you're not in session. And then you develop firm pride, a confidence of actually being the deity, and that is founded on bodhicitta. And whenever that arises, you can be confident that now I really actually am the deity. This is the actual divine pride. It is the pride or the confidence founded on bodhicitta.
아니 가지고 더 있다 너도 내가 네 봐. 이제 잠깐에 와서 거기 포토도 가네. 네 말이 봐. 나도 사는 거지. 아니 말이 봐. 나도 포토도 가네. 다 보고 잡아놓지. 다들 양장이 이 포토가 가네. 네 말이 봐서. 네 말에 안 포토를 하던 좋고 너를 속았던 포토가 네 인연도 그거래. 너희들이 안 포토들이 왜 갖고 거는 이 바꾸지 간단히 좋아. 그래서 지나 그 다리에 나와서 좀 다리에 봐도 사람이 이제 진짜 좀 저쪽 하는데 그래서 사람들이 그래서 또 많이 되네. 좋아서 지금 이 세계 통계를 따지는 체를 갖고 세계 통계 이것도 나중에 봐서 참 정말라에서 정말 저쪽도 그래서 그래도 수입 장을 받았지. 라이트 타마를 마루자 로고사 뜻인가 타탐제가 마루고사 뜻하자 마루자 양정도 보는 리디지만 이 나중에 그걸 대다서 본 이 라이트가 차고를 뜻이거든. 이 스메가 잘가요. 신기야 내가 맞고 받아라. 하던 지라고 라이트 지가 잡아. 그러니까 톱스나 게지 말게 좀 잘한 거래. 이걸 좋아하는 것만이나 톱스나 라지 말아도 맞아. 니를 생각하지 않고 뭐지. 얘네들이 생각을 하는 거지. 가가지고 말, 내 가래끼는 했을 때는 저도 생각으로 죽으면 명당을 시. 많이 쓰는 명당을 많이 이거. 직장으로 말이야. 사과를 지금 생각을 저도 하고. 이렇게 상반의 미래들이 플라치는 이거 사이트를 찍히죠. 가지고 세진이 프리모 전체 나타나야 똑같은 거를. 내 기능이 참 이세 미래에서 하더니 어머니를 가서 어머니를 미래에서 나타난 게 있었고요. 내 기능이 참 세워가는 것을 말해봐 잘. 이 세마타를 이 세반의 세상을 봐도 세마타를 플라치에 있잖아. 야차로 이거 보지만 그걸 보지도 사고 와시는 하나 잘 타고 일체를 믿다. 완전 많이 상태로 했지.
So first, when you practice the generation stage, the visualization, you focus on the visualizing clearly the face of the deity, and then you recite the deity's mantra. So there's actually 4 levels through which you progress along your practice. And we visualize first the seed syllable on either a sun or a moon disk. Often when we practice peaceful deities, it is a moon disk, and when we practice wrathful deities, it is often a sun disk. So for instance, now we visualize a small moon disk, just the size of a watch, and later even smaller. And in the center of this moon disk, there is the seed syllable of whichever deity you're practicing, like the Shri or the Hum, or even a flame. And so here it is the Guru Rinpoche mantra. So you visualize the seed syllable surrounded by the Amma Hum Ben Sakura Bima Siddhi Hum mantra. So first, there is no rotation. You just visualize the static and syllables around the seed syllable until that becomes clear, until that appears clearly in your mind. And so of the 4 levels, branches of approach and accomplishment, this is the first one. It is the approach. In the approach, it is like you're acquainting yourself with the deity. So you visualize the seed syllable surrounded by the mantra garland, and until that becomes clear. And then when you find this is very clear now, very stable in your mind, then you come to the second branch, the close approach. This is like you becoming friends with the deity. And so here then the mantra garland around the seed syllable begins to slowly turn, circle. And as you habituate to that, later it accelerates and becomes quicker and quicker, so that later you cannot even follow it with your eyes any longer. It's too fast. And so then that, when it becomes that fast, then you reach the third branch, which is the accomplishment. And so at this level then, from this mantra, garland and seed syllable, light rays radiate and gather back. When they radiate, and they make offerings to the Pure Lands, and they purify the karmic imprints and self-grasping of sentient beings. And with love, they melt the ice block of self-grasping in sentient beings' mind. So think that when these light rays radiate, I'm actually bringing benefit to sentient beings. Through boundless compassion, self-grasping in the mind of all sentient beings dissolves, and they all become the deity. Because that is their potential. When their self-grasping has disappeared, they all can actually be the deity. They can be enlightened. So practice this visualization with that understanding. So think that there are then all those countless sentient beings have become the deity, and they all proclaim the sound of the mantra. And moreover, the trees and the bushes and all the sound perceived actually gives off a natural sound of mantra. So train in perceiving all the sound as the mantra again and again until that becomes clear and stable in your mind. And when that becomes clear, then you come to the last branch, the branch of the great accomplishment, the Drupchen. And so at this point, you actually become merged non-dual with the deity. Merging non-dual with the deity means that you never forget about the deity. It's always in your mind, just like a mother always thinks about her only child because she loves the child very much. So that is, the deity is always in your mind in an instant. And so even when you're not reciting the sadhana and so on. And so that also can be trained, habituated by trying to remember the deity and the mantra every time you wake up from sleeping, like in the middle of the night. Whenever you wake up, immediately remember the deity and recite a few mantras, remember sentient beings. And then in that moment, your mind will become that, because ultimately, actually, there is no self. Whatever you think of, that is what you will become, because the mind has no form. The mind is like a mirror. Anything can be reflected in it. So that is why we refer to it as the mirror-like wisdom. So there is no I. The mind is just like a mirror. Whatever I think of, this is what I will become. Therefore, if I cultivate love and compassion, I will become the deity. So that is very important to understand. So whenever you wake up from sleeping, immediately try to train your mind in remembering, for example, the Bensaguru mantra or the Mani mantra immediately upon awakening. And if you can habituate to that, then later after you have died, first you fall unconscious, but then you wake up again. It's just like waking up from sleep in the same way as when you were alive. And if you have habituated to it while alive, then also after death, when you wake up from unconsciousness, you will be able to remember the deity. And if you do so, then with 100% certainty, you will attain enlightenment in that particular Pure Land of the deity, like the copper-colored mountain Pure Land of Guru Rinpoche, for instance. And so that is what is meant with attaining enlightenment in a single lifetime, in a single body. And so in this case, it is enlightenment in the Sambhogakaya, in the second part.
So the bottom, giant bottom, and God, so given the out of patches of the one day, the one day you can be actually viable, the challenge with it. But I'm not like it really do it for all last one. I don't know somebody. Really not part of it to the shield. There are children, some get you so upon now, Sharon. There are things also country, also Madaka Tamade, that are doing me. Don't need also Madaka Yogi, Madaka Yoga last on this one. That is not get long or Tabata get long so music. This is not dark so music. This is not a deep. Like Tawana, Lydia sent the door. Done the Chadam of Material, Tiranji, there at me, Dodgism, so mine. Dodgism, none don't go for the medical program or Lamcoris. Yes, something to talk on the market in the conclusion of the Japan, so long come to Lamcor, what you lunch in your small son. That all happened Zokana, James alone, costumes in the second of the Bangla Charlie. Da, I'm going to harm rather than I'm not this is all plenty of my. Then the child of the condition, can't not all the Dadum to Jesus for what chilling on the bones and jail. Then you're dark, give what I can, not give up there. Did the moon to call it nothing more, try to chill. The lady took a jump about the task of time. You said, don't talk about it, the same around you did to be away. She married the Batanke, and he retired to see how some they literally sent it. Mama, nothing did. Say, you're not lying, me, it's in the around there. 찾아주는 거랑 유니어들 또 톡톡이 해서 그래서 동물이 따로만 내면 좀 많이 와차 이건들이 이해가지고 배기로 이 라면에다가 이 인터넷에 그렇게 찾는 것들이 라면이 무슨 거예요? 톡톡이 해서 것도 또 손도 톡톡이 해서 지금 보조력은 좋아하는 봐야 되니 이런 공부하는 때 보조력을 공부하고 도대체는 공부하고
And so then in the context of the great accomplishment, the Drupchen, here we have realized the ultimate nature, and that is that sentient beings all possess Buddha nature, and there is nothing that is impure. Only temporarily beings are obscured by temporary stains, which is the stain of self-grasping. And since that is the only stain, if you give rise to love and compassion, the stronger your love, the more powerful your mind will become, and the more self-grasping will diminish. So you think that as love permeates sentient beings, their ice block of self-grasping melts, and they become one with the ocean mind of all the Buddhas. So here in the Guru Rinpoche Sadhana, for example, it says, all appearances are the Guru's form. So for example, here all males, for instance, are Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, or Chinresik. It says then all the sounds are the Guru's speech. So all sound becomes, for instance, the Benza Guru mantra. And when you see it in this way, then there is no grasping at form or at sound. So the mantra actually protects your mind in this way. So when there is no grasping at form and there is no grasping at sound, then there is no basis for any thoughts of attachment or aversion, or any negative thought to arise within your mind. So you rest within the naturally empty awareness, the empty awareness, the Vajra of the mind that lacks any inherent existence. Also in the prayer, in the sadhana, it says, things are, all phenomena are primordially pure. And it says, alala. And that is actually very profound because it represents the pure nature of everything that appears and exists. And so that is, to sentient beings, things appear in an impure way, but this is only a temporary perception that does not actually relate to reality. It is only a fixation in the mind. But if there is no grasping at form, if there is no grasping at sound, then the mind remains actually completely pure. So this is what we refer to as the three vajras. It is appearance, empty appearance, empty sound, and empty awareness. So when there is no such grasping in the mind, then the mind is pure because there are no thoughts of attachment and aversion. So in the Nyingma tradition, the meditation, the practice is always based on the three vajras. That is, vajra of form, empty appearances. And for example, that is when you see a person, you see that as the guru's form, as it says in the sadhana. And seeing a form in the guru's as the guru's form means you do not grasp at the form at all, as either existing or not existing. And not just one person here, but whatever you see, whichever being in samsara you might see, you see it as the form of Guru Rinpoche, of the Lama. So all form are the Guru. There's no grasping at form. There's no grasping at sound. So in this way, you become free from the subject-object duality. There is no object that the mind can grasp at. The object that is separate disappears. And the same is true for the appearance of sound. All sound becomes mantra. There is no object of sound to grasp at as to be anything different. And that is unlike our ordinary state of mind. Normally, when we hear something, we label it either with attachment or aversion. Immediately, it catches our attention and we think, oh, what did he say, for example? Actually, sound is empty. And so that is the reason why we can actually say it is empty is because the mind changes immediately. Even though we hear something unpleasant, if you remember something nice that happened before, the next moment you start laughing. And then the next moment you remember something terrible that happened and you start crying. So that really shows the empty nature and how it is really all a fiction created in our own mind. So if you remain free from grasping at whatever appears on the outer level, then the mind naturally abides in the Vajra mind, which is empty awareness. And then just naturally abiding within that state, all ordinary perceptions of like self-sufficient existent entities, substantially existent entities will just dissolve and the mind will rest in its natural state. So that is then the point where mind merges with outer appearances. That is when you realize that outer appearances are not separate from you. Self and others are not separate. So that is when the ice has dissolved and you rest within a state of Mahamudra. And that is to rest within empty awareness or the Vajra of the mind. So abiding within that state, you become free of grasping. And that state then in turn benefits others. Even if it just arises for a moment, it is already beneficial. So these are referred to as the three vajras or the three unchanging vajras. They are unchanging because ultimately the basis is emptiness. So ultimately we attain this enlightened state of the three vajras.
大体年纪的目前的他大国有的你这云南这蛮些的，这他些人啊，他你看他太大国的，家里的这个风景这个杂人嘛的，舒服的那的是这样的吧，这样的嘛，差不多，大家这个那的是我工作我是，那是我工作的，他的这样的差不多，这个泥巴的，就是说我的泥巴的地呢，那地方就不这个地，那就不有的啊，就你这个地方他好多工作地呢，这呢，他把卡这么的呢，卡拉土地呢，这有这个呢。这个做的这个真是咱都不做大路的，好好找了什么，土地呢还要配合那地方在这里，那个是把要大的，那就占头，我们红白的做个非常是的，这就这个有你可不有的，那就占了你趁早差不多，这边人他不知道到后来你吃啥货，这样他不落了你，他吃点了，他们这一切没有，也感觉有人骂他的，但骂就是一切没有打出来，这样过来，这搞起当这不是那个，到底得把好，骂的当是，你不管什么当了，我们红的，我们红的，你就把红的，红的，你把啊，这地方的听。就是爱掉就是你用红我们这里弄对他就弄长期是他的吃的我们这样的这个革命的成双方上，这红的弄红韩国弄的那个这个弄到的红成双就红韩国一点把这个好的这一空的一把我这个说那个到这个人，那就得这样子人呢，这个哪里过去不要来，千万万要不要来，你千不得，我们有时候看到了这个地当的欲望嘛，我们的啊，的后面的，那弄过的这个人呢，那个人上哪，这是我的，是吧？他们这个过生活这个产业，那个嘛不能把它搞完给发生啊，我们。我们不能做有的是的，你都要把下一把这个工资还好的，另外这把他们也当着呢，我们不记得把这些把这来，当成一个儿子。
And so this is how it is explained in the sadhana, but it might be a bit difficult for a beginning practitioner to really grasp the entire meaning of empty appearances and empty sound. So therefore, the most important aspect to take now for us in the beginning is to first of all make an effort more, a greater focus on the visualization of the mantra garland. As you recite the mantra, because that it is said that the mantra garland with the recitation has the power to purify the dualistic grasping to self and other, the substantial existence, grasping at the substantial existence of outer appearances. So the mantra recitation and the mantra garland purify and that fixation. And so that is the purpose of practicing the 4 branches of approach and accomplishment. And so sometimes people ask, how many mantras do I have to recite? Will it be enough to do 100 or do I have to do 1,000? But actually that completely misses the point. Actually, you should recite the mantra until the deity always remains in your mind and you never forget about it. And actually, if you're able to recite the mantra clearly while visualizing the mantra garland, you will eventually never again forget about the deity. It's always in your mind. And apart from that, also the mantra recitation actually has 2 special qualities. And one quality is actually related to your physical health. If you just have your a mouth closed and you don't recite the mantra, even from a scientific perspective, that's actually quite harmful because you need some physical movement. For example, when you recite the mantra, you're moving your tongue. And when you're moving your tongue, all the channels in your body start to move. And when they move, then obviously also for example, the channels in your stomach move, and that helps to cure many stomach-related illnesses and so on. And then the Dharma benefit of reciting the mantra is that it purifies your verbal obscurations. And for this reason, it's very important to recite the mantra clearly. So to announce each syllable with clarity, ahum benza guru pema siddhi hong, not slurring it or like that. Because if you slur the mantra like that, it is like actually a form of ignorance, and eventually you will fall asleep. So it is important for the sound to be very clear, because then also your mind becomes clear, and that is the point of deity yoga practice. So recite the deity's mantra again and again with great clarity of speech and of mind, and do it whenever you can, best ideally continuously in whatever you do, even when you do your job, for example. And if you're not able to always recite mantra, instead of reciting mantra, for example, you can also practice the Om Ahum Vajra recitation that encompasses all mantras. So for that, when you inhale, you think Om. Then you hold the air briefly, thinking Am. At that time, you visualize a fire flame at the navel, and then you exhale the air, thinking Hong. So when you inhale with Om, think that you are inhaling the vital essence of the wind energies and all the blessings of the Buddhas. And then with Ah at the navel, think that all dissolves into the fire flame at the navel. And then when you expel the air with Hong, actually only the old air is expelled, but the quintessence, the essence of the air, remains in the fire flame at the navel. So that actually is a quite easy practice that you can always do, also before you go to sleep, for example. And actually it encompasses all the other mantras. So if you can't do any other mantra, that is sufficient. Also, it is a great support to attain a state of non-distraction. So when you practice the Om Ahung, it is only a mental recitation, which means you don't actually visualize any syllables and you don't think about it in terms of any colors. There is no visualization of colors. You just mentally recite Om Ah and Hung. And that actually is, Om Ahung syllables actually encompass all the mantras of secret mantra, because the Om Ahung represent the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all the deities. That is why they all are marked by the 3 syllables at their forehead, their throat, and their heart, as a sign that they all are in essence the same. And for this reason, if you only recite and practice the Om Ahung Vajra recitation, actually that in itself accomplishes all the other samayas of other mantras.
마 같이는 하 콜비 마지막 이 콜로 하고 나도 쇼바는 거 되게 많이를 말하는 거예요. 오 이게 서로 나도 다들 좋아하는 다들 말도 우리는 하나가 들어오고 이렇게 공부도 그다음에 이렇게 들어오고 나니 뒤가 다들 가오때 공부가 나무는 어디 다들 다섯 들고 이렇게 소소로 되게 보고 알아서 트라킹으로 강한 자리라 마들과 다들 바르니 저희 독생이 되거든요. 프라다들이 다 가서 고라 기분이 좋게서 말 용시 봐서 하고나 다시 봐거나 그발시 봐 수바나 용시 봐서 이렇게 그렇게 되거든요.
So in general, it is explained that the mantra, garland, the mantra has 9 benefits, but they are just too many to remember. So I will just tell you a few of the most important benefits of the mantra, of the greatest benefit. So the first one is the mantra is the deity. So for example, when you recite a single Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, each mantra recitation creates a form of Chandresic, for instance, because the moment you recite the mantra, you think of the deity. So one Mani mantra creates one form of Chandresic through the sound of the mantra. So it is a mantra-born deity. Actually, in the explanation of the Dakinis, there's something similar. There is different kinds of Dakinis. There's the mantra-born Dakinis, there's the field-born Dakinis, and then there's Dakinis born from enlightened activities. So the various activities can be performed through mantra recitation. So the mantra is the deity. So the mantra garland is the deity. And then the mantra garland rotates and light rays radiate from it. And think that from this countless light rays, on the tip of each light ray, another deity emerges, and that deity radiates to the Pure Lands and makes offerings to the deities there. So you think that it multiplies the light rays. There's first 1, then there's 10, there's 100, there's 10,000, 100,000, and so on. So limitless offerings are being made to the deities in the Pure Lands. So therefore, the second benefit is the mantra garland also becomes an offering. Then the third benefit is it also becomes a purification of obscurations of all sentient beings in the 6 realms. So the mantra garland rotates, the light radiates, and it pervades all sentient beings. So all of these benefits are accomplished through the rotating mantra garland and the light radiating from it. We've mentioned that first it slowly spins and then it accelerates to turn so fast that we cannot even follow it with our eyes. For example, like on a jet plane, when the engine begins to spin, it spins so fast we can't see it anymore. But there's a natural, like a humming sound coming from it. And so when you habituate to that, for example, when you hear the sound of an engine plane and so on, of a jet plane, then eventually you habituate to that being the nature of all sound. Like when you hear the sound of the elements or any other outer sound, that all becomes the humming of the mantra. And for example, that's often the experience of someone who has participated in one of the drupchins, for example, the Kilaya drupchin and so on. Slowly people first begin to like the mantra, and then they always listen to the mantra, and then in the end they perceive all sound, like the engine of a jet plane, to be the mantra. And that perception purifies the habitual grasping to a subject-object duality, and a pure perception arises within the mind. So all of this is actually accomplished only through the rotating mantra from which the light is radiating and gathering back. So that some of the benefits are it becomes the deity itself, it becomes an offering, and also it becomes a purification of obscurations.
고르치고 또 고르고 누가 찍고 합니다. 그런 일은 홀들에 바로 배운 자산이고요. 그런 남자들이 좋아하지 이거 나쁘고 잡아먹어는 게 많이 슬라데 하는 것이 이래서 지금 잡아먹어는 게 갑자기 생기시 쇼를 나한테 중국으로 관계를 삼아야 되니까 아니고 그렇게나 이제 나중에 대체 뭐라고 그래도 삼아야 되는 그게 교회 또한 안 되는 거예요. 이게 나중에 자원을 저 땅으로 그렇게 논을 하지만 할수 없어서 라포도 필요도 하고 필요도 하고 이 라포도 통화하는 뭐를 아이들 이런 것들이 그런 남자까지 잡아야 되고 러브를 자기가 많이 하는 레벨 보고 이렇게 야기 참 이메일을 걸어서 해야죠. 그런 남자까지 성그런 남자와 얘기가 차이가 라포시와 하여튼 걸어 살았다고 배우들이 다른 것이든 피부들이 그거 상지 라포 배우 라포 종들이 매매 통화 지 생긴 속자서는 이 소문을 없어요. 이제 저기 배우 저다 선물을 상지 원하는 라포 배우는 게
So then actually the great benefits of the mantra garland are also accomplished by spinning a prayer wheel, for example. There's also other bigger prayer wheels in the larger monasteries, and they all accomplish the same benefits of the mantra or the mantra garland. And for example, it is very good to have a handheld prayer wheel because the benefit can be accomplished anywhere. For example, when I'm going in an airplane and I spin my prayer wheel, then I am visualizing that from this prayer wheel, countless mantra syllables and light rays of Vedic and Tara descending down, and they permeate all sentient beings like raindrops falling down. And as they enter the minds of sentient beings, self-grasping diminishes, and they all give rise to love and compassion. And actually, when they give rise to love and compassion, then just naturally their lifespan and their merit will increase. Virtue will increase naturally. It is the self-grasping mind, which is like ice, that keeps the mind tight in bondage. So in brief, the deity, the mantra garland of the deity is an embodiment of bodhicitta. And so also therefore when we spin a handheld prayer wheel, the same can be accomplished. So the prayer wheel tradition actually first emerged from Nagarjuna, who brought them to this world from the Nagaram at the time of the Buddha Dipamkaram. So there was actually like a friend, a yogi, who had a tanka drawn, which is also arranged here. And this tanka was then signed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This prayer wheel tanka. So it shows the preciousness of the prayer wheel. And later on in our times, it has been propagated by many lamas like Tata Rinpoche or Khenpo Punzog and so on. And it is said that one only sees, they will not be born in the three lower realms, and that is due to the aspiration of the Buddha. So also the handheld prayer wheel accomplishes the same benefit as the mantra garland.
최소다 라를 배우고 너는 라에 이제서 가까이로 말했지. 라를 라민이 있다고 이제 당말 라를 가까이로 말했지. 이것이 좀 제기거든 제세 로반지 봐. 그것이 만만한 작업을 피바도 그래서 노바도 되는 데지. 어디 이제 this is 너무 엄청 독특한 코란이 고쳐요. 데이터를 이렇게 이제 시간들 하고는 시간 나와요. 동대를 레벨이 클래스에 바로 방법이 라 생기 차들을 생기를 하고 다들 많이 가서 다들 이제 근데 내기 답이 뭐를 해서 볼까요? 일단 뭐 생명은 이제 라를 뭐지나 이런 생명도 대양하는 샤리들이 답이 이제가 남들이 내 이제가 되게 어떤 일이나게 못하더라도 얘기합니다. 저희 라면이 라지 생기야 그러면 너무 아파요 동기나 라지 좋아서 제발 좀 그래서 다음 속에 라지 무슨 좋구나 개념만 좋아할 거였어. 가야지는 개념만 이제는 좀 대상적인 라지 몸 좋아하고 또 이게 이제는 좋아하잖아. 라지 무슨 프라지 제발 좀 이렇게 가야지. 라 무슨 배우지 라 무슨 배우다 말을 되는 거고요. 그래서 막 그렇게 봐.
So then, most importantly, through the mantra recitation, we attain siddhi, that is, we accomplish the deity attainment. And so, how do we accomplish the deity that we are practicing? It is accomplished through the mantra recitation. So, in the end, the mantra garland becomes the siddhi or the attainment. And the deity is accomplished if we recite the mantra of the deity with clarity, continuously, and have the deity in mind all the time, so that we never forget the deity. It always remains in our mind. The face of the deity is always present within our mind. And what appears here, the deity that appears, is your own mind, and it doesn't appear anywhere separate from your mind. It's your own mind. Your own mind is like a mirror, and due to various conditions, whatever you think of, this is what the mind will become. Nagarjuna also had said, because things are empty, anything is possible to arise. So it is possible to be a demon, it is possible to be a deity, depending on the condition that you encounter. If you are selfish, afflicted, if you're jealous and competitive, then in that moment the mind is like a demon. It's evil. If you give rise to bodhicitta, that is the deity in the next moment. And if you die with such a mind of bodhicitta, then the mind becomes the deity upon death. Because on the basis, there is not the slightest difference between you and the deity. Also, Milarepa had said, the deity, or the gods and the demons and the gods actually do not exist separately. There are no demons and no gods. They are one on the ultimate basis. So that means only due to a temporary condition, we call something a god or a deity or a demon. And that is, for example, if one is competitive and jealous and has negative intentions, then we can call that a demon. For example, even in a worldly sense, if there's someone, for example, who's doing great things to benefit their country and the common public, and then someone else comes along and tries to undermine all their efforts, then in that instance, that person who wants to harm others is like a demon, a demonic state of mind. Because wanting to harm others actually will lead to harming oneself in the end. And so, as a result, if that person then dies with such a state of mind, of jealousy and anger and so on, then they will take birth in the hell realm and so on. And on the other hand, if we die with the deity in mind, then upon death, our mind becomes the deity. So it is important to understand that on the basis we are not separate from the deity. And so often we are instructed to do different visualizations in the beginning. For example, we visualize ourselves as the deity, or we visualize the deity in front. There's the self and the front visualizations. But actually, all of these visualizations are your own mind and not separate from you. So when you visualize the deity, you should see it appearing in your mind just like a reflection in the mirror, again and again. So that is like the self-visualization of the deity. And then as you habituate to that, eventually as you progress through the 4 branches of approach and accomplishment, when you reach the final stage, you merge non-dually with the deity. And you realize the deity is me, and I am the deity. The deity is always in your mind. And being the deity, there is no harm in whatever of the 5 sense pleasures you enjoy. In fact, it becomes an offering to the deity. So actually, if we wish to make offerings to the deity, then we should make offerings to the Sangha. An assembly of Sangha is when 4 Sangha members come together and engage in practice, for example, a deity sadhana, a ritual. And making offerings to them is the same as making offerings to the deity then when they practice a sadhana. So again, in terms of accomplishing the deity, it is the mantra recitation that accomplishes the deity. And then for the siddhi, there's two types of siddhi that we attain. There is the common siddhis and the supreme siddhis. The supreme siddhi is the attainment of enlightenment when self-grasping has come to an end and precious bodhicitta has arisen in the mind. And the common siddhis are the various types of well-being and happiness in the higher realms temporarily. So first, for one's own sake, one attains the royal seat of Dharmakaya, and that is the supreme siddhi. And then for the sake of others, one brings forth the four enlightened activities. For example, the ability to pacify negative circumstances and illness, or to increase lifespan, merit, and wealth, to control or magnetize everything that appears and exists, and so on. So that is accomplished through the mantra. And then in addition, the mantra actually also is referred to as a liberation by hearing. That is why, for example, I tell my students to listen to the mantra CD. So you always hear the sound of the mantra. And that is called liberation by seeing. Then there is liberation by hearing. Then there's liberation by seeing. For example, these bracelets that we have here. The mantra on the outside is a liberation by seeing mantra. It is really very precious because it is said in the the Forceful Waterfall Sutra that whoever sees this mantra only once will purify the negativities accumulated in 300 million aeons. And that mantra from that Waterfall Sutra is actually accepted as the authentic word of the Buddha in all the lineages like Sakya, Kagyu, Nyingma Gelugpa, and so on. Actually, that is also why, for example, I print it on my T-shirts and everywhere, because many people like to take pictures with me, and personally, I don't think that there's any great benefit of having my picture taken. But so I'm looking for a skillful means to make it somehow beneficial, and so that is why I'm printing this mantra on all of my T-shirts. So now at least there's a benefit when people take picture with me, because if they take a picture, then whoever sees that in the future and will purify their obscurations, and bodhicitta will arise in their mind. So that's why I now like to take pictures, actually, because I know that whoever sees this mantra, it will close the door to the three lower realms. So that's liberation by seeing. And then also on the inside of your bracelet, there is a liberation by touch. And that is, if you wear that bracelet, if it touches your body, when you, for example, experience an untimely death, then at the very least you will be born in the God realm. And that is if you're someone who doesn't know any Dharma at all, at least you're born in the God realm. So that is the actual benefit of the mantra. There's one other example of a master who has accomplished mantra. We have given him a nickname, like we call him the Lama, the iron burning Lama, like Chasa Lama. Many of you know him. He actually visited here before. So what he does is he has accomplished mantra, and he takes a piece of metal or actually any object, and he recites mantra over it for a few minutes, and in that time it becomes burning hot, and then he can burn anything with that and cure illnesses. Actually, he can even heat up his own thumb and make a burning mark on your skin as a healing method. And in this way, he actually has healed many of my illnesses that I have had ever since I came out of prison. And for example, I was unable to move my hand. My hand was stiff, but now I can move it again because he healed me. So that is really an example of someone who really has accomplished the power of the mantra. And whoever practices that will accomplish that. That is the word of the Buddha, and that is Buddha who never tells us a lie. The problem is just that we are unable to really put our mind to it and really practice, to truly practice. We waste a lot of our time in having fun, drinking tea, hanging out, and so on, and practicing here and there. But in this way, we will not be able to really attain true accomplishments. But if we would actually put our mind to it and really practice, we also would be able to attain such accomplishments. So many of you know about this Lama. He also has visited here, and he's really a prime example of someone who has really developed the powers of mantra recitation. And that is the power really of the Buddha's aspiration. So there are some people who are also actually criticizing him and gossiping a bit about him, but there is no harm caused by that because I personally know about his exceptional qualities and healing powers. And that is really the power quality of the Dharma and the power of the mantra.